Hi there, and welcome back to another episode at Station Road. Now, today's episode is a little bit of a mixed bag. There's a lot of little wee itty bitty subjects to cover, and that includes a small update on what's been happening on Station Road layout. Of course, there's a little bit of a progress update on the Sandling Junction layout that I've been working on in conjunction with Paul. We also have a small update too, of course, on this planned trip I have to the UK. And then finally, actually, just a little bit of the business end of this channel with regards to subscribers and viewership. So we'll start the episode with what's been happening on the Station Road layout, which hasn't actually been a great deal, but there are a few small areas that I've been working on, and that includes, of course, the coal siding and also a small amount of landform that needs sorting out. So we'll start there first and head over to the layout. So as I mentioned, the first place I thought I would start is with the ballasting around the coal merchant's yard. So just a small section of track, obviously between the coal staves and of course the goods platform on the other side. And I thought the best approach was to use a finer grade ballast. So what I did is mix together a little bit of the fine grade Pico ballast with some of the Pico cinders, and possibly around about a 50-50 mix, and spread that down essentially really as the base for this ballasted area. And then once that was spread down, then I went over with a light sprinkling of just the Pico cinders by itself in various areas, with a little bit more of a concentration obviously on the coal merchant side. And then I went over it again with some very fine sand type material, and this was a product, a New Zealand Scenics product, and it looks a lot like sand. And I just went over some of the areas where, particularly in the areas between the track where there was sort of larger areas of ballast, and a little bit sort of up around the goods platform, to even it out a little bit so it didn't actually look too much like chunky ballast. Of course, once that was all done, then it was a case of spraying over a fine mist of some water, which I think had a few drops of IPA in it, and then of course applying the 50-50 glue water mix and giving it a good drenching. So with the coal siding completed and looking reasonably realistic and grimy, as you would expect next to the coal staves, it was a case of moving on now just to the area further down where there's a slight change, of course, in the baseboard levels, of course, where the incline from the goods yard starts to descend to the main lines. And I always wanted to smooth this out so that it gave the impression of more of a natural landform. Now, the easiest approach I sort of thought of dealing with this was to use some of the air dry clay, which of course I've used in previous episodes, and it's quite easy to sort of mold this into a shape, and of course it goes rock solid once it's fully dry. So apart from the little area creeping up around where the pavement is, which I rolled out a piece of this air dry clay into sort of a finish piece and slotted that in there, so I actually cut that to shape with a craft knife, slotted it in. The rest of it was just a case of packing in clumps of this clay. Now, as you'll see, of course I've used PVA glue as well, because that really does help the clay to adhere, of course, to the baseboard layer. So one of the aspects too was I wrapped the base of the curved warehouse. Now that is actually a lift out section, so I wrapped that with a bit of cling film, or here in New Zealand it's commonly known as glad wrap, and that's just simply to stop the air dry clay, of course, from attaching itself to the building. And the theory is I'll lift that out afterwards. It was similar to what I did with the goods shed when I was building up some layers within the goods shed area where the track is. So once it's generally sort of packed in, then just with some wet fingers I could smooth it over and level it out a little bit, and that essentially just makes a good base for the slightly undulating landform. So as you can see, not a lot has really happened. The last month has really been disrupted with lots of different things, and then of course to top it off, recently I've also had quite a painful toothache which I've needed to sort out before I head off on this UK trip. So next on the list is what's been happening with the Sandling Junction layout. Now, the latest progress has been fine-tuning the actual baseboard framework, and that was really quite a complex task. So as you can see, this baseboard framework is very complex, and a lot of thought needed to go into the framework, where battens would be positioned, and this of course is relating to where point motors are going to be, where there's going to be dropper wires, and also supporting risers and things like that for inclines. So it took a lot of nutting out, and of course what I ended up doing is color coding sections of framework, so it made it easier for Paul and I to sort of work through the process of assembling these units. So on top of that, then there was the actual baseboard sections as well, so they're just as equally complex, and working out inclines and things like that. Now, the reason really why I wanted to get down to the really nitty-gritty detail of this was so that Paul had a really good, thorough starting point to work from. And the idea is that I would step in with Paul in the latter part of October for a week and actually work with him on the layout while I'm over in the UK. Now, of course, I thought my maths was rather good, but it of course turned out it wasn't, and I got some of the angles wrong where the timber needed to be cut on specific angles. So Paul went ahead, started building some framework, and then of course when we got to the angled framework, he encountered some rather odd anomalies with the framework, and on closer inspection I discovered I had provided the wrong angles. So with that hopefully sorted out, Paul can carry on with his work on that. So he started obviously with some of the more straightforward framework. There's quite a lot of just simple rectangular framework, and that was pretty easy to put together, and he didn't muck around wasting any time getting this underway, and started to assemble some of the first framework, and you can actually see his enthusiasm. He wasn't prepared to muck around or even actually move any of his storage items out of the way. He just wanted to get something up. And then of course his cat was also wondering what on earth was going on, possibly not really quite sure what to make of this new industry going on in the upstairs guest room. So as you can see, Paul's well underway with some of the framework, and I think possibly he may leave a little bit for me to do by the time I get there in a few weeks' time. So moving on to this trip to the UK. Now, I actually fly out next Wednesday, so it's Sunday today, so there's only a few days left before I head over to the UK. Now, the plan is, while I'm travelling around the UK, I'll continue to hopefully upload some videos to the channel. There may be quite a few shorts in the channel as well. So, of course, one of the highlights of this trip is attending the Gets exhibition in Milton Keynes. And it was quite interesting. A fellow YouTuber by the name TimberSurf, and I'm actually not quite sure of his name, put out a video just recently calling on YouTubers who will be attending this exhibition for a meet and greet at the exhibition, specific location and a specific time on both days of the exhibition. Now, from my understanding and from his video, and there's a link in the description below, that there is several mezzanine floors in the exhibition hall, and there is a planned meet and greet for both days at 11 AM on the first floor mezzanine. So I think that's going to be absolutely amazing to meet fellow YouTubers and get to meet some of these people face to face. Now, you'll see I'm sporting a logo of my channel on this top. Now, I thought in preparation for this exhibition, it might be a good idea that I have some form of branding on my clothing, because I may well just be disappearing into the crowds that will be there at the Gets exhibition. So I've branded a couple of tops. So if you're at the exhibition, whether you're a fellow YouTuber or just a viewer, and you want to come and say hi, I'll be wearing a top, either this or maybe it's a polo shirt, t-shirt, which will have the channel logo on it. Now, one of the interesting aspects about travelling to the UK, and this really relates to some of the statistics that I have on the YouTube channel. Now, first up, roughly about half of all my viewership is actually UK viewers, so that's quite a fair chunk, and it's kind of understandable really, because obviously I model British railways, so hence why there's such a large proportion of my viewership is obviously based in the UK. Now, since I'm travelling to the UK, I'm sure there's a lot of my UK viewers who may be interested in tracing my steps and following me as I travel around the UK, or even actually timing up when I might be in a location, so maybe they might be able to spot me, come and say hello. Now, the interesting aspect is with the channel statistics of all the viewership, and this is worldwide, only about 25% of you actually subscribe to my channel. So one of the aspects obviously with subscribing to the channel is, of course, you get notifications of what I'm doing, where I'm at, if I'm doing a week short and I'm located in a certain place, or that I provide some information about where I'm going to be. Now, for all of you non-subscribers out there, you're going to find that out at some point when you stumble across my video. Now, I kind of relate it a little bit to, say, you're at a railway station and you're looking at the departures and arrivals board, and you can actually see when trains are leaving, when trains are arriving, and so forth. Now, that's the viewpoint from what I would call a subscriber. Now, for a non-subscriber, you might as well just have a blank section of departure boards, because you don't know when the next video is going to come out, you don't know what it's going to be about, and so on and so forth. So in my view, I kind of feel like, well, if you want to keep track of where I'm at, where I might be at a certain location, or get that information as up to date as possible, then it kind of makes sense to subscribe. So I know this is a bit of a push in this area, but it makes a lot of sense. And I know that some of the issues why people don't subscribe to YouTube channels is because obviously you do have to sign up to YouTube. It doesn't cost anything. It's just simply signing up to YouTube as a membership, but it's free. Maybe it's because you just don't want to divulge any personal information, which is actually very minimal anyway. But in doing so, you get these updates, you get a chance to see where I'm at the time. So for anyone in the UK, while I'm traveling there and you'd be keen to meet me, find out what I'm up to, then the chances are you're going to have a better opportunity to find out where I'm at and what the latest video is. So with that all said, and all those non-subscribers out there that enjoy watching what I get up to on this channel, think about it. Think about signing into YouTube and subscribing to the channel. So that's it for this episode. The next episode you'll see on the Station Road channel will be from somewhere in the UK. So I'll sign off for now. Do take care, everyone. Look after yourselves. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will catch you next time. Bye for now.